The House of Tax Policy will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Neely,
Here.
Representatives Farhat,
Here.
Rixey,
Here.
Carter,
Here.
Witset,
Here.
Grant,
Here.
Price,
Here.
Van Workum.
Here.
Markkinen.
Here.
Outman.
Here.
Tisdale.
Here.
Hoadley.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Vice Chair Verhad makes a motion to adopt the minutes from May 17, 2023 meeting. Without any objections, the meetings are adopted. Today, we will vote on House Bill 4317, Vanderwall 4318, Neely, testimony and vote on House Bill 4829, Ayash, and testimony on Senate Bill 55, Chain, and Senate Bill 127, Seen, House Bill 4530, Martis, and 4531, Snyder. First, I would like to read in some cards for Bill 4317 and 4318. Dina Broswell from Michigan Association of Counties is neutral on the bills. Supporting the bills is Michelle McWilliams from Michigan's Snow Sports Industry and Association, and Amanda Stalling from National Grid Renewable supports the bill. Representative Grant makes a motion to report House Bill 4317 as substitute H1. Vanderwall with recommendation. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Neely.
Yes.
Representatives Farhat,
Yes.
Rixey,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Witset,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Van Workum,
Yes.
Markkinen,
Yes.
Outman,
Yes.
Tisdale,
No.
Hoadley.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, 1 nay, 0 pass. HB 4317, support the recommendation, substitute H1.
Thank you. Representative Brixey makes a motion to report House Bill 4318, Neely, with a recommendation. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Neely.
Yes.
Representatives Farhat,
Yes.
Rixey,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Witset,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Van Workum,
Yes.
Markkinen,
Yes.
Outman,
Yes.
Tisdale,
No.
Hoadley.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 11 yeas, 1 nay, 0 pass. HB 4318, support the recommendation.
Thank you so much. Now we will take up House Bill 4829 from Rep. Ayash. Can you please come forward and start when you feel like it?
I feel like it. Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to do some yoga before I start. This is a relatively simple bill to explain to folks today. House Bill 4829 would amend the Michigan Business Tax Act, which deals with the brownfield credits on a specific project known as the MID. It's a development. If you've been to Detroit, right off Mac, there's a Whole Foods. Just north of the Whole Foods is this big plot of land. And the developer is intending to build a hotel and a housing development with some affordable units. And this would simply extend that credit. Due to COVID, the developer got caught up with his other business, which is healthcare, obviously, and they're just asking for another extension. So MEDC recommends 5 years as the final extension to see if they can get this done. With that, I welcome any questions.
We have a question from our Minority Vice Chair. Go right ahead.
Yeah, maybe you can, thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe you can just enlighten the committee a little bit more on this project and why another extension. The I guess, excuse of COVID was already used, and now seems like, again, COVID is being used as another explanation of why we have to do the extension. Is there something more that is happening here that the committee needs to be aware of?
To my understanding, no. But there is an attorney with the developer present. I'll have him unpack if there's anything else that he'd like to share. But, I'll leave it to you.
Good morning. My name is Embry Matthews.
I'm sorry, can you hit the red button for us? Thank you.
Apologize. Good morning. My name is Embry Matthews. I'm actually not an attorney. I'm the development advisor and manager for the project, just to clarify. And obviously, COVID has had the most significant impact by far it's actually been a cascade effect because it's impacted the ability to obtain financing for the project. And so it's certainly related to a lot of delays that first started during that process, but really what's happened is as we've stabilized from some of the pandemic effects, the financial markets have still not stabilized. This is still a fairly substantial project in a market that financing sources are not completely sold on. And so it's taken far longer than we thought to obtain the financing necessary. Ours is obviously not the only project that's endured this type of effect, but certainly ours is particularly significant.
So on the financing, when was this project originally? I believe it was 2011. Is that correct? That this project is this financing throughout this project haven't been able to secure, or now opening it up to 5 years? Are you trying to shop financing, or is this set? The financing is in place and we're ready to move on.
So I'll answer the last question first. The financing is not set, but it is very favorable right now, more favorable than it's been in the past few years. Answering the first question, my client actually did not acquire the property in 2011. That was a prior owner and developer with an entirely different plan. We actually undertook a more comprehensive plan that I think the city of Detroit supported more strongly because it included housing, hospitality, and retail. And so the plan was much larger than originally conceived. And that really did not come into effect until 2019 when we were formally approved with zoning and entitlements associated with that. So literally we were approved months before the pandemic. And that brought everything to a halt from our perspective. So we've really been acting to recover from that standpoint. So given the constraints on the market and the financing, it has taken some time to get ramped up, but we now have a clear path to financing.
Rep. Price.
Thank you, Chair Neely. Could you share some of the impacts to the community if this extension is not granted?
Absolutely. So just to provide a little bit of background and be respectful for your time, this project was one of the earliest that went through the entire community benefit ordinance process in the city of Detroit, meaning that we held comprehensive meetings with the community on an ongoing basis, which was personally important to me because I grew up in this community. And so we had the opportunity to solicit the input of folks in the community and specify those items that they wanted to hear in our actual agreement. So just as a point of additional clarification, we actually have a written agreement with the city of Detroit, which compels us to honor our impacts associated with the project. So specifically, what we would have is we would have far less affordable housing in the community than we would otherwise have. This project has always maintained an important commitment to affordable housing. We also have obligations to provide retail opportunities for citizens in the city of Detroit, and we have to maintain a prospect list and have committed to about 20% of the retail space going to, and that's throughout the project, not just for this phase. It is intended always to be a multi-phase project, but all of the phases would have those same impacts. And then there are some ancillary community public access. This project was always intended and will be intended to have public access associated with the common area. So there's no gated portion of this project. There's no fenced-off project. It's intended to be a representative community in Midtown and accessible that way.
And if I can just add, Madam Chair, you know, I would encourage those who represent Detroit. I see several of you all on the committee to ensure that as we talk with council that we are holding this developer accountable and making sure that there are those interests that the community wants at the forefront. And rest assured, I will not be back ever again to advocate for another extension for this particular project. So they get these 5 years is what the discussion I had, and if they can't get it done, someone else has to develop that property.
Rep. Holy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both for your testimony today. My question is, have we broken ground yet? And if so, at what phase or percentage of completion are we at this time?
We have not broken ground yet. Our documents, in terms of construction documents, are far along and ready for that process. It really is contingent upon the financing.
All right, seeing there's no other questions, thank you for testifying today. We appreciate you. Oh, one moment. Rep. Altman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, thank you both for your testimony. I'm just wondering why this extension is coming up now with 3 months to go on the initial extension.
That's a great question, and I take personal responsibility for that. I wanted to have much more clarity on our financing before we went before this body. I thought it was important that, as Representative Ayash demonstrated, that we not come back here again. And I wanted to make sure that we had much more certainty about our financing prospects before we even made the request. And that was the answer. And it's been a process. I feel much more optimistic than I have in quite some time, certainly prior to the pandemic. So.
All right, thank you guys. I appreciate you. Have a good day. Next, we would take up Senate Bill 55 from Senator Chang. Welcome to Tax Policy.
Thank you very much.
You can start.
All right. Well, thank you, Chairwoman Neely and committee members for considering Senate Bill 55. Senate Bill 55 improves access for our residents to the poverty tax exemption, otherwise known as the Homeowners Property Tax Assistance Program. In 2020, we passed Senate Bill 1234, sponsored by Senator Runstead, which allowed local units to opt in by resolution to allow the poverty tax exemption to stick for 3 years, and also allowed for a 1-year look back in granting the exemption. This change mostly benefited those on a fixed income, like low-income seniors or people with a disability whose source and level were unlikely to change significantly. This meant that they did not have to keep proving every year that they were still eligible for the poverty exemption during the pandemic. Legislation dealing with this had been considered prior to COVID, but it was COVID that finally did spur action back in 2020. So this change to the poverty tax exemption that we passed in 2020 was very successful. And as Catherine McCleary, who you'll hear from soon from the Michigan Association of County Treasurers, will testify, are proved as a very useful tool to those local units who opted in. The problem is that the opt-in window closed on February 15th of 2021, and the bill was signed into law in late December 2020. So the window for local units to opt in was really short, and we want to be able to extend it to more municipalities to opt in. So Senate Bill 55 will do a few things. One, it would extend the COVID extension that we passed in 2020 so that poverty taxes would be exempt for these individuals until 2023 for eligible exemptions who are already receiving the exemption. Allow for a 1-year extension of the exemption is consistent with Senate Bill 881 that unanimously passed the Senate last year. And it will allow for a 1-year look back to allow exemptions to be granted. The claim would have to be filed with the Board of Review with supporting documentation establishing eligibility for the exemption for the immediately preceding tax year. And it would allow local units to opt into this 3-year sticky poverty exemption by passing a resolution prior to December of this year. This bill was developed in cooperation with the Michigan Association of County Treasurers, did pass the Senate unanimously in 2022, and it also did pass the Senate this March, so we're hoping that we can see this through to the governor's desk this term. During the hearing process, we did incorporate some feedback from the Department of Treasury, and I know that they are here, so they may have some additional comments. I do believe that on Zoom we have Catherine McCleary from the Treasurers. I'm happy to take questions either now or after her testimony.
Well, we do have one question. Rep. Britsky?
I just wanted a comment, not a question. As a former treasurer, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. It's something that will ultimately remove additional paperwork and headache over the long run and allow people to stay in their homes. The fact that it's optional and communities can choose whether they want to do it is really good. And thanks for looking out for folks.
I appreciate that. We certainly did a lot to help folks out during the pandemic, but we should continue to do that. And again, it's exactly what you just said. It's about keeping folks in their homes. And these are people who are, their income level is just not changing. They shouldn't have to keep filling out paperwork over and over again. So appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Now we will have to testify for us is on Zoom, Catherine McCovery. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair Neely and members of the House Tax Policy Committee. Can you hear me distinctly on Zoom?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'm Catherine McClary, Treasurer of Washtenaw County, and I am co-chair of the Legislative Committee for the Michigan Association of County Treasurers. And it's a pleasure to be here today before Chair Neely's committee. Deb Cherry, Treasurer of Genesee County and a former legislator, speaks so highly of Representative Neely and your service to Michigan and Flint's people. Thank you. The Michigan Association of County Treasurers wholeheartedly supports Senate Bill 55. It will provide for a 1-year retroactive application of the poverty exemption for families who are eligible. And this is eligible for a poverty exemption. It really is pegged toward the federal poverty, not an amount that's 120 or 150%, unless the local unit has authorized that. This small action will prevent tax foreclosures in our communities. Treasurer Cherry and I represent large but different counties based on demographics across the state, including our smaller counties. County treasurers agree this small measure, adopting a retroactive exemption as provided in this Senate Bill 55, will benefit all of our residents. Many treasurers don't encounter the families we need to help until they're already in their second year of tax delinquency. Some of them are eligible for a poverty exemption and would have been eligible the year before, but they don't know about it. By catching up on their real property taxes with a poverty exemption, we can keep families in their homes. We can keep their kids in their schools with their current teachers and peers. We aren't uprooting people, foreclosing on people, evicting people, and having a larger homeless problem. Our efforts as county treasurers to prevent tax foreclosure improves neighborhoods by eliminating the blight of a foreclosed home, and it maintains property values so that tax revenues can continue to come into our schools, our cities, townships, and counties. Michigan State University did a study during the Great Recession and discovered that property values drop within a huge radius of several blocks whenever a property is foreclosed. This bill would mitigate the problem of reduced property taxes and reduced values. Other studies in Michigan and the United States during the Great Recession showed that physical health and mental health problems increased with foreclosure. The documentation shows that there are more heart attacks when a foreclosure is pending, and more emergency room visits, which is costly to a community. Please vote for Senate Bill 55 out of committee, and please encourage your colleagues to vote for it on the House floor. It passed the Senate unanimously, 37-0, and we look forward to working with you with the law being implemented. Thank you, Chair Neely, and I'm willing to take any questions should the chair permit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions. Thank you, Senator Chang, for coming over. We appreciate you. This is a good bill. I would like to read in some cards here. Peter Moran from the Department of Treasury, they're neutral. Supporting the bill is John from Michigan Melissa Lead. And also supporting the bill is Tabitha from Michigan Association of United Ways. Next, we have to testify is House Bill 4530, which is Rep. Martis. We're going to also ask Senator Singh and Jason, that's going to be here for Snyder office. And you can begin when you're ready.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing us to testify today. Thank you to our fantastic staff and wonderful colleagues. These two bills reestablish a very important income tax credit that was on the books for decades that allowed for tax credits to support donations to nonprofit organizations throughout our state. This was originally put on the books in the 1980s, but was eliminated in 2011 as a part of an overhaul on our tax system under the Snyder administration. The original tax credit allowed for Michiganders to deduct 50% of their donation or gift, capped at $200 for single filers and $400 for joint filers, to a Michigan Community Foundation, homeless shelter, food bank, or public institution on their tax statements. Now, that few $100s may seem small, but the impact when this was repealed in 2011 was profound on homeless shelters, food banks, and community foundations. A study done by the Johnson Center for Philanthropy found that from 2011, when this was taken off the books, through 2013, there was a 50% decline in $400 donations and a 27.5% decline in $200 charitable donations. What this legislation does is it puts this back on the books, but at a slightly smaller level of $100 for individuals and $200 for joint filings. I've seen in my own life the transformative impact that these foundations and organizations can have. My brother and I both share the middle name Ryan, named after different individuals. The one that my brother's named after was Ryan Martis, who is a distant family relative. A little over 20 years ago, Ryan Martis and Chewy Luna were Flint police officers. They died in a tragic accident. Out of that tragedy, their family started the Martis Luna Food Pantry, which has been really active in the Flint community, making sure that folks are fed. For a number of years, my family and I thought, given that our last name was on the foundation, that there were some distant relatives who were doing work with this organization. We found out that while it was called the Martis Luna Food Pantry, the Lunas were really covering and sharing the burden of this. So in recent years, we've tried to be more involved in this organization, and we've seen the transformative impact. When you look at Flint and Genesee County, whether it's the aftermath of the water crisis, whether it's moving forward from COVID, we've seen really the success of this food bank and others. And I think we're reaching a point as we're moving past COVID, as a lot of our COVID dollars are being spent. Our job here in the legislature is to make sure that those are spent effectively and efficiently. But as those funds dry up, we have to figure out how are we going to help others? How are we going to figure out what worked during the pandemic and what do we need to make sure stays in place post-pandemic? And I'd put these bills in that category of it's a tax write-off that's relatively simple. It worked in the past. We think it can work in the future, and it can really help supplement as folks are having less access to those programs as the pandemic recedes into the rearview mirror, as there's less programs to help those suffering from lack of access to food. This is a tax credit that can hopefully increase donations and make sure that our most vulnerable, those people that need the most help, are really taken care of.
Hello, I'm Jason Colella, Director of Policy for the Office of State Representative Will Snyder of Muskegon. He is unable to testify today and sends his regrets. First off, thank you so much, Chair Neely and members of the committee, for giving us the opportunity to speak about these bills, and to Senator Sam Singh, who graciously brought us onto the House version of these bills. Our bill, House Bill 4531, is the House version of Senate Bill 127. These bills restore tax credits to donations to community foundations. In Michigan, community foundations are defined by statute, and there are 53 of them across the state. In fact, the Senate has already passed SB 127, 33-5. This tax credit was repealed in 2011, and the following year, as previously stated, there was a clear decline in charitable giving. Our bill restores this by allowing folks to claim $100 as an individual filer or $200 as a joint filer, or an estate 10% of their tax liability up to $5,000, whichever is less. These types of tax credits are effective at increasing donations and creating lifelong givers in our community. As all of you know, community foundations are a powerful tool to create positive impacts in communities across Michigan. Back home where we're from in Muskegon County, the Muskegon Community Foundation is one of the key institutions in our community. In fact, locally, they have assets of over $277 million as of 2021 and distribute over $11.3 million a year in 2,190 grants. Their impact, though, is so much more than just the dollars and cents. They convene tough conversations, they help form the spine of our downtown, and have an impeccable public image as a successful group capable of making big impacts. It is estimated that from using data from when these tax credits were previously in place, that our bill would reduce state revenues by $3.3 million. This bill, while sounding modest and having a relatively small impact on revenue, will have big, far-reaching impacts on donations and community foundations across the state. We kindly ask for your support on House Bill 4531.
Madam Chair, thank you for bringing these bills up. I will be brief since both gentlemen did a great job of discussing both of these bills. I would just add two additional pieces. Our community foundations, our food banks, and our homeless shelters, what they saw was a group of more young people, young families donating at these levels. And once you get somebody who's donating for their first time or second time, then they become lifetime givers. And so they really saw this as a great opportunity to sort of introduce philanthropy and giving to a group of new donors. And that was probably a vast number. And so when you saw that drop-off that Representative Martis talked about, the drop-off was really from these small, first-time donors, young families, and so forth. So it was a great tool to sort of grow and build out that network. And so, as was mentioned, both of these bills passed the Senate with significant bipartisan support. My bill, specifically on the community foundations, was 33-5. It might have been 34-4 on the other bill, but it was in that sort of range. This bill also passed the House in the past. In 2020, it passed 74-31. At that point in time, an unknown representative named Joe Tate and Rep. Berman were the sponsors of those bills. And so this has been discussed over time, has been bipartisan in nature, and so we really appreciate you bringing these bills up. Thank you very much.
All right, we do have one question from Rep. Hoadley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank all three of you for your testimony today. So these tax credits existed prior to 2011, and since they've gone to the wayside, and given the impacts of inflation and the lack of charitable donations, how did we come about with just the same numbers we had in 2011? What research or input did you have to get or derive to these numbers rather than something that fits today's economy?
I think we would always want to be able to grow something like this to meet, like you said, the inflationary changes and so forth. But we also know that these are tax credits that are trying to bring in people for the first time and second time. And so we don't necessarily know that don't believe that they have to be huge tax credits for the individual to begin to build this lifetime kind of commitment of giving. We've also had this issue been brought up for many sessions where it's been very difficult to get the legislature and or Treasury at times to support it. And so I think we came back to these same numbers because it was something that we were hopeful that could move the conversation forward, because it's been difficult to try to get these back. But that key piece of getting kind of those young families, those young donors, will still see the impact at these $100 level, $200 tax credit levels. So.
Thank you.
Rep. Van Wert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious, as you guys were developing this bill and the language, was there any consideration of putting, so you're getting all these $100, $200 donations now to community foundations, of whether there was restrictions? You guys already talked about the good things, the housing or the food assistance and shelters and things like that. Was there any conversation of saying that percentage of those donations had to be required for the cause compared to the operations of the endowment or the community foundation?
Well, specifically, the dollars are required to go into endowment, and so this was, as they were created, was to build endowments at community foundations. So we have now this money going for the long-term nature of a cause. Many organizations, 501c3s, can create their own endowment within the community foundation, and this is what then provides a broader reach for the nonprofit sector. You know, we've had questions asked in the past, well, why can't other 501c3s have this access? Well, through a community foundation, they can. Community foundations allow 501c3s to create endowments, and then they can work with them, and this allows that for the broadening of the opportunity, but it's specifically meant for endowment for the long-term nature. I know that there are some community foundations who are here to testify, and they might be able to answer more specific questions about how they operate and so forth, and so maybe additional questions could also be given to them as they come forward.
All right, thank you guys, I appreciate it. Now we will have, we're going to have a group that's going to come up. Nathan Murphy, Randy Ross, Lauren, David, and Brent. You guys can come up to the table. And when you come up, can you give us all your titles? And you can start when you're ready. Thank you.
I'm Randy Ross. I'm the Vice President of Donor Services at the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. We serve a 7-county region: Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, Monroe, Washtenaw, Livingston, and St. Clair counties.
My name is Lori Baumer. I'm President and CEO of the Capital Region Community Foundation. We cover Ingham, Eaton, and Clinton counties.
Hi, I'm Dave Mengebeer. I'm the President and CEO of the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation. We cover 5 counties in northwest Lower Michigan: Grand Traverse, Antrim, Leelanau, Kalkaska, and Benzie counties.
Good afternoon. I'm Nathan Murphy. I'm with the Council of Michigan Foundations. I'm the Government Relations and Public Policy Coordinator.
Good afternoon. My name is Brett Hunkins, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the Community Foundation of Greater Flint.
You guys are all welcome, and you can start whenever you're ready.
Well, Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for inviting us for the opportunity to testify. I also wanted to thank Senator Singh and Representative Martis and Representative Snyder for introducing these bills. As I said, I'm the President and CEO of the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation. I also serve on the Council of Michigan Foundation Board of Trustees, and I'm the co-chair of CMF's Government Relations Public Policy Committee. I've submitted some written testimony, so I won't repeat that verbatim, which I'm sure you appreciate. I'm here to express support for House and Senate bill that are reestablishing the charitable tax credit, House Bill 4531 and Senate Bill 127. Just a little background: Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation started 31 years ago with $800,000 in assets, and in that year, 1992, we made 3 grants. At the end of 2021, our assets had grown to $100 million, and each year we award scholarships to students pursuing post-secondary degrees or professional certifications in skilled trades, and to our nonprofits of about $3.5 million a year. One of the things that this bill does is it provides a tax credit for gifts to community foundations to their endowed funds. And I think that is the specialty of community foundations. We receive gifts from donors. We pool all those gifts and invest them in the market. And then each year we grant out a relatively small percentage of the overall market value of those funds. But we do it this year, next year, and every year thereafter forever. And so long after we're all gone, that legacy of supporting the causes and organizations we care about will continue to receive that support, the financial support for education, for arts and culture, for environmental programs, for youth and family programs, and social welfare and health. We're very proud of the work that we do. And community foundations are not just funders. We also are conveners of the business, nonprofit, and government communities in the service areas that we serve. And I think I would say we are seen as kind of like Switzerland. We're seen as a neutral party that can bring our communities together to solve problems like housing, access to quality child care, early childhood education, youth mental health, and other community and economic development issues. So I want to just reiterate one of the things that Senator Singh said. One of the main reasons we're so interested in the reestablishment of this tax credit is because it does encourage first-time and younger donors to give to community foundations. So in essence, with this bill, we are building a future generation of philanthropists. It's a relatively small tax credit, but we've seen from research done by the Johnson Center of Philanthropy at GVSU that it has a direct impact on giving, particularly for those first-time donors. We don't want community foundations to simply be the province of the wealthy or the well-to-do. We want our community foundation to be a community foundation for everybody in our community. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify today.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing us to give testimony today. I won't reiterate everything you've already heard. There's no point. A couple things that haven't been said, though, about our particular community foundation here in the Tri-County area in Lansing. We host over 530 funds. These are from individuals and organizations, businesses, and even municipalities. But of those 520 or 530, 200 or so are what we call agency funds. These are those nonprofit funds that are set up to support themselves. So it's a vast majority or vast number of our funds are for nonprofits directly. And I think that really speaks to the need that they're seeing for their own organization sustainability, not just today, but forever. So we are huge proponents of building endowments so that these organizations, particularly grassroots organizations that are serving the most needy in our community, they need to understand what it means to be sustainable and stable. So I just wanted to make that point that right here in this community, it's a wonderful tool for our nonprofit community. I also want to mention that it's really important to have these during times of trouble. During tough economic times, it's a source of funding that our charity partners can count on, and we've seen it time and again. I want to just say, too, that it is affecting many of the funds that are serving the hungry, the homeless, and veterans. We're talking about some big nonprofits and small nonprofits, nonprofits that you know of, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Boys and Girls Club, Highfields, Hospice, and Ellie's Place, charities that are really the fabric of our community and lifelines to families. When it went away, the Johnson Center study does not reflect the Capital Region Community Foundation. That was minuscule. That study showed, I think, was stated 50% and 29% in those two categories. What we saw locally, those small gifts fell 70% at the 200 level and 76% at the 400 level. So it was a profound difference when those tax credits went away. And finally, I just want to share something on a personal level. For 16 years, I was the CEO of Ellie's Place, which is a healing center for grieving children that is headquartered in Lansing and is now in 3 other communities in Michigan. We didn't have a ton of money when we were really, really small, and so we did start putting little chunks away into our endowment fund for sustainability. And it was important to me as a leader of that nonprofit to stash away any extra money I could in that endowment fund for a rainy day. And I can say that it did make a huge difference, and it really did make a difference in the lean times. And now I'm proud to say, looking back, I just checked the funds this morning for Ellie's Place, and it's almost $400,000 in that little tiny fund that started with a few hundred. So I'm very proud of that, and I hope that you will consider this bill.
Again, I also submitted written testimony that I won't reiterate, but I would like to emphasize the important role that community foundations play in terms of economies of scale for these nonprofit organizations. We provide a lot of efficiency, market reach that they couldn't otherwise get on their own. And so our organization serves more than 230 organizations. I've named a few in my testimony. I'd like to read a couple because I think they'll resonate with some of you. Organizations like Detroit PAL, the ARC of Northwest Wayne County, Alternatives for Girls, the Amity Foundation, Lighthouse of Michigan, the Guidance Center, Clinton River Watershed Council, and the Arab American National Museum. And these are organizations that are providing important services to our communities, to our residents, and the endowment funds are a really important tool for them. One example in my testimony is the Old Newsboys Goodfellows Fund. They averaged over 200 gifts from 1997 to 2011. In 2022, they got just 26 gifts to their fund. Throughout the history, over 4,600 gifts to that fund. 4,000 of them, over 4,000, were $500 or less. That fund now has grown to more than $2.1 million. It's distributed another $1.8 million back to the organization. I'm sorry, gifts totaled $1.8 million in grants, and the fund balance is now $2.5 million. So it's this long-term perspective that really provides that sustainable funding that organizations can count on. And endowment, we kind of see it like, just like for-profit organizations need working capital, nonprofits need that too to fulfill their mission in service to our residents.
Thank you, Chair Neely, for the opportunity to be here in committee as well. As I said, I'm from the Community Foundation of Greater Flint. I also have written testimony, but I will skip over most of that to highlight a couple of points, to emphasize some points already raised. One of those is the distribution of a predictable source of dollars to the not-for-profit. The endowment approach allows for a consistent spending and investment policy that provides predictability about dollars, not just that they will be available, but we can work with the not-for-profit organizations to help them understand how much to expect and how volatility in the market will or will not impact the future distributions and the timing at which it may or may not influence that, which is just great for them on a day-to-day basis. But as has been raised during COVID and the pandemic, that certainty was invaluable for organizations as they were trying to work with so many needs that were of such a much greater scale. In Flint and Genesee County, we emphasize health disparities in response and treatment of COVID as one area that we could really provide some help to the organizations in understanding what their budget impact would be from the endowment that we hold on their behalf. A second thing to speak to is the point of organizations being able to direct their donors and the Community Foundation be able to partner in that direction for future gifts to the funds that we hold. And as has been said, those smaller dollars, while it may seem like in the scope of dollars or gifts that we get that might seem like smaller gifts, they begin to have this multiplier effect because of the endowment aspect of them, which then allows us to tell a story about how it's not just this most recent pandemic that we have gone through, but any future unknown event, there's predictable dollars that will be there for their use at that time. And one specific example of something that we've seen in our community recently that has really illustrates the value of this is that the Habitat for Humanity in Genesee County, when its longtime executive director retired, one of the things that was critically important to her was to make sure she was leaving the organization in the best financial state she could. And one thing that she and her board had felt was important was to establish an endowment for the Habitat for Humanity going forward. And so she was in contact with us, and we helped navigate the conversation to where they did decide to have an endowment at the Community Foundation. And then as part of her going away celebration. She worked with her donors to create additional gifts to the fund, which has happened to great effect. And so that fund was established 2 years ago. It's already over $50,000, and that will begin the process that as these additional gifts come in that the tax incentive can create a multiplier effect for, they will see a greater and greater growth of that distribution over time. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate taking testimony on these bills. As I said earlier, I'm with the Council of Michigan Foundations. We're the statewide membership organization for Michigan philanthropy with almost 300 members, and that includes the community foundations that serve every county in this state, some of the members you've heard from today. I just want to underscore a couple of things that aren't in the written testimony in as much detail that I submitted. We know these tax credits work. We know that from the research from the Dorothy Johnson Center out of Grand Rapids, but we also know that from several lines of national research, including some research from the Lilly School of Philanthropy in Indiana showing a decrease in donations from families of modest means, and a recent report by Giving USA that just showed more new data that we are continuing to see a drop in donations from families of modest means that these very tax credits are targeted towards. As my members up here have talked about, we're really excited about these because these help working families invest in communities where they see a need. They're in these communities and they see a need for something like after-school opportunities, or they've got a family member that's had food or housing insecurity. They can donate to nonprofits that have endowed funds at our members, held by our members, to make a difference in the issues where they see a need in their communities. So I really encourage your support. We support these because it spurs charitable giving, including the first-time donors and smaller donations from families of modest means. We know the tax credits work, and we see the differences that it makes with the nonprofit partners that our members serve in communities around the state. I appreciate your time and attention so much today, and we would be happy to take any questions you might have.
I just want to thank you all for all the work that you do in our communities. We do appreciate you, and I know our community foundation in Flint does a wonderful job there, so thank you so much. We do have a question. Representative Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all for your testimony. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the Phoenix Community Foundation that's located in Pontiac and wondering how that process really works. So my question to you is, as these donations come into you, how are they allocated, distributed to the organizations in your community?
Each of us is going to have a spending policy according to prudent management standards. For ours, we review our spending policy annually, and it's up to 5% currently based on a 12-quarter average. So the idea is that you're trying to provide a steady source of revenue back to the organization, but also investing at the same time so that they can continue to grow. Ideally, gifts go along with that investment growth as well to have a multiplier effect, as we've discussed. But the idea is that it's going to be there forever so that the organization has that predictability.
If I could just add to that, Representative Carter, a lot of our funds are donor designated, meaning that the donor actually decides what organization or causes they want their grant dollars to go to. And then many community foundations also have undesignated grant making, where we identify what are the gaps that our other funds won't support, or what are the most pressing needs in our community. So it's a combination of both donor-directed funds and grants directed by our board and staff.
And again, I just want to thank you all for coming and testifying today. Thank you so much, and you're free to go. Thank you. Now I'd like to read in the cards. We have the Food Bank Council of Michigan support. Department of Treasury is neutral. Michigan League for Public Policy support. Stephanie Calhoun, CEO and the Director of the County Community Foundation support. Sarah Ward support. Nancy Boxley from Lapeer County Community Foundation support. Brana Cal, President of CEO from Community Foundation Support. Todd from President of CEO of Community Foundation of Muskegon supports. Battle Creek Community Foundation also supports. Michigan Nonprofit Association supports. Michigan Nonprofit, oh, we have two of those, of Lansing support. And Kalamazoo Community also support. The chair is going to go at ease. Tax policy will come to order. Now we will have Representative Grant to make a motion to report House Bill 4829, IOSH, with recommendation. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report, Chair Neely?
Yes.
Representatives Farhat?
Yes.
Rixey?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Witset?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Van Workum?
Pass.
Markkinen?
Pass.
Outman?
No.
Tisdale?
Pass.
Hoadley?
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 1 nay, 4 pass. HB 4829, support the recommendation.
Thank you so much. Now we have Representative Price make a motion to excuse. We don't have any absent members. Well, without any objection, there is no further business before our committee. This committee stands adjourned.